In just 41 seconds, a $107 million scandal would explode. Pam Bondi didn't expect the microphone to stay on. She didn't expect Jasmine Crockett to have the receipts. Cameras rolled. The committee room fell silent. What did Bondi deny about Jeffrey Epstein that only exposed her own involvement? At exactly 2:47 p.m. on March 15, 2019, the House Judiciary Committee chamber buzzed with pre-hearing tension. Mahogany desks gleamed under harsh lights, C-SPAN cameras positioned like predators. Pam Bondi walked in like she already knew the verdict, but her binder nearly fell from her hands. Across the room, Representative Jasmine Crockett sat like a predator, spotting weakness. Her dark eyes tracked every nervous movement Bondi made, every stuttered greeting to committee members, every forced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Crockett's briefing folder remained closed, but her fingers drummed against it with the patience of someone holding a royal flush. The hearing was supposed to be routine, another congressional oversight session about campaign finance violations in Florida. Bondi, the former Florida Attorney General, had been called to testify about irregularities in political action committee donations during her tenure. What nobody expected, least of all Bondi herself, was that Jasmine Crockett had spent 3 months connecting dots that would unravel everything. Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler called the session to order at exactly 3:03 p.m. The usual formalities dragged on, but tension crackled in the air like electricity before a storm. Bondi adjusted her microphone twice, then a third time, her hands visibly shaking as she fumbled with the clip. When she finally spoke, her voice carried that familiar prosecutorial confidence, but something underneath betrayed her. "Thank you, Chairman Nadler," Bondi began, her voice steady, but her jaw clenched. "I'm here today to address any questions about campaign finance compliance during my time as Florida's Attorney General. I want to be absolutely clear from the start that all donations were properly vetted and legally obtained." That's when Crockett struck. "Ms. Bondi," Crockett's voice cut through the chamber like a blade, "before we discuss vetting procedures, I'd like to ask about a specific donation. Are you familiar with a $25,000 contribution made to your political action committee in September?" Bondi's eyes darted nervously to her notes. "Congresswoman Crockett, my office received thousands of donations during that period. You'll need to be more specific." "The donation came from the Donald J. Trump Foundation," Crockett continued, her tone remaining perfectly calm. "Does that refresh your memory?" "Yes, of course I remember that donation," Bondi replied, her voice gaining strength. "That was a completely legal contribution from a legitimate foundation. There was nothing improper about it." The chamber held its breath. Reporters leaned forward in their seats. Even Fox News cameras zoomed in on Bondi's face, catching the slight twitch in her left eye that always appeared when she was stressed. Crockett opened her folder with deliberate slowness. "Ms. Bondi, I want to show you something from the Trump Foundation's own tax filings. This is IRS Form 990 from 20." She paused, letting the weight of official documentation settle over the room. "The purpose listed for this $25,000 donation is, quote, to support efforts to discourage investigation into Trump University fraud allegations." Bondi's face went white. Papers rustled in her hands as she shuffled frantically through her binder. That's not accurate. The donation was for general campaign purposes." "Miss Bondi," Crockett's voice remained steady, but her eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of someone about to land a knockout punch. "Are you aware that your office was investigating Trump University fraud complaints at the exact time this donation was received?" Well, there were many ongoing investigations," Bondi stammered, her prosecutorial confidence evaporating like morning mist. "And are you aware, Ms. Bondi, that your office dropped those fraud investigations exactly 6 days after receiving this donation?" The chamber erupted. Gasps echoed from the gallery. Republican committee members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Democratic members leaned forward, sensing blood in the water. Camera flashes popped like fireworks as photographers captured Bondi's deer in headlights expression. But Crockett wasn't finished. "Ms. Bondi, I have here bank records showing that this donation was processed through a shell company called Justice for All PAC. Are you familiar with this organization?" Bondi's hands were shaking now, papers scattering across her desk as she searched desperately for answers that weren't there. "I don't recall the specific details of every intermediary organization." According to SEC filings, Crockett continued, her voice growing stronger with each revelation. Justice for All PAC was incorporated in the Cayman Islands just 2 weeks before your donation was processed. Its sole purpose, according to incorporation documents, was to facilitate political contributions for investigative immunity. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Even MSNBC cut to breaking news coverage, with anchors stumbling over themselves to explain the implications. Twitter exploded with Bondigate hashtags faster than trending algorithms could process. Chairman Nadler banged his gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order as the gallery buzzed with whispered conversations and frantic note-taking. Bondi sat frozen at her table, her face cycling through emotions like a broken traffic light: confusion, panic, anger, and finally, resignation. Congresswoman Crockett, Bondi finally managed to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was not aware of these specific details regarding the intermediary organization, Ms. Bondi," Crockett interrupted, her tone now carrying the full weight of prosecutorial authority. "I have one final document to share with this committee." She pulled out a folder marked confidential in red letters. "This is a copy of an email exchange between your chief of staff and a representative of the Trump Foundation, dated September." Bondi's jaw clenched in confusion as Crockett began reading, quote, "Ms. Bondi is prepared to close the Trump University investigation upon receipt of the agreed contribution. Please confirm wire transfer details for Justice for All PAC account." End quote. The chamber fell into absolute silence. Even the court reporters stopped typing. C-SPAN cameras captured every micro-expression on Bondi's face as the devastating evidence sank in. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no words came out. "Ms. Bondi," Crockett continued, "this email was sent from your official government account. Are you telling this committee that you were unaware of correspondence sent from your own email address?" Bondi's voice cracked as she attempted to respond. That email, I don't recall sending that specific message." "Ms. Bondi, the email metadata shows it was sent from your personal device at 11:47 p.m., which according to your calendar was during a private dinner with Trump campaign officials at Mar-a-Lago." The revelation hit like a nuclear bomb. Republican committee members began whispering frantically among themselves. Fox News aides could be heard in the background struggling to spin the bombshell. CNN immediately cut to legal experts discussing criminal conspiracy charges. Representative Jim Jordan, typically Bondi's strongest defender, sat in stunned silence, his usually combative timidive replaced by the look of someone watching a train wreck in slow motion. Even he couldn't find a way to defend the indefensible. Bondi made one last desperate attempt to regain control. "Congresswoman Crockett, these documents, how did you obtain them? This could be a violation of executive privilege." Crockett smiled for the first time during the hearing, the expression of a chess master delivering checkmate. "Ms. Bondi, these documents were provided to this committee by the Department of Justice as part of an ongoing criminal investigation into campaign finance violations. They're public record as of this morning." The final blow landed like a sledgehammer. Bondi's remaining composure crumbled completely. Her hands visibly trembled as she reached for her water glass, nearly knocking it over in the process. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the chamber's air conditioning. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was barely audible. I need to consult with my attorney before answering any further questions, but it was too late. The damage was catastrophic and irreversible. Social media erupted with memes faster than platform moderators could track them. TikTok videos mocking Bondi's meltdown went viral within minutes. Late-night comedy shows had enough material for months. The hearing continued for another hour, but Bondi was finished. Every subsequent question was met with, "I don't recall," or "I need to consult my attorney." Her political career, built on a foundation of prosecutorial toughness and conservative credibility, crumbled in real time on national television. As the gavel finally fell and the session adjourned, Bondi sat alone at her table while committee members filed out. Reporters surrounded her like vultures, shouting questions she couldn't answer. Her staff formed a protective barrier, hustling her toward the exit as camera flashes illuminated her path of shame. Outside the Capitol building, Jasmine Crockett held an impromptu press conference. "Today's hearing demonstrated that no one is above the law," she declared, her voice steady and confident. "The evidence speaks for itself. The American people deserve accountability, not cover-ups." The aftermath was swift and merciless. Legal experts on every major network dissected the evidence, confirming that Bondi had likely committed multiple felonies. Ethics investigations were launched. Criminal referrals were filed. Her law license faced sanction proceedings. Most damaging of all was the realization that this was just the beginning. If Crockett had uncovered this much evidence about one donation, what else was hiding in the shadows? The Jeffrey Epstein connection that started the investigation remained largely unexplored, promising even more devastating revelations to come. In the quiet of her hotel room that evening, Pam Bondi stared at news coverage of her humiliation, playing on endless loop. Every channel, every website, every social media platform carried the same story. Her attempt to deny the obvious had backfired spectacularly, transforming a manageable scandal into a career-ending catastrophe. The irony wasn't lost on anyone who knew her history. Pam Bondi, the prosecutor who built her reputation on holding others accountable, had been held accountable herself by someone who did her homework better than she ever had. By midnight, the story had evolved beyond a simple campaign finance scandal. Investigative journalists discovered that Justice for All PAC had processed over $2.3 million in similar transactions during Bondi's tenure. Each donation corresponded precisely with the closure of high-profile investigations. The Epstein connection revealed even more disturbing patterns. Phone records showed 17 calls between Bondi's personal cell phone and Epstein's private line in the weeks following his 2008 plea deal. The timing wasn't coincidental, it was calculated. "What we discovered," Crockett explained during a CNN interview, "was a systematic pattern of pay-to-play justice. Every major investigation that disappeared from Bondi's office had a corresponding donation. Legal experts confirmed that federal prosecutors were treating the case as a potential RICO conspiracy, carrying sentences of up to 20 years. Bondi's legal team issued a statement denying all wrongdoing, but their words rang hollow against the documented evidence. The most devastating revelation came 3 days later, when Crockett released audio recordings obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request. The recordings, made during official state business calls, captured Bondi's voice, discussing investigation priorities and resource allocation in terms that sounded more like auction bids than law enforcement strategy. "We need to be smart about where we focus our limited resources," Bondi's voice crackled through committee room speakers during a follow-up hearing. "Some cases provide better returns on investment than others." The euphemisms fooled no one. She was talking about selling justice to the highest bidder. By the end of the week, 3 more attorney generals from other states had been implicated in similar schemes. The scandal metastasized from a Florida problem into a national crisis of confidence in state-level law enforcement. Congressional oversight committees launched investigations in 12 states. The Department of Justice announced a task force dedicated exclusively to prosecuting corrupt state officials. Bondi's attempts at damage control only made things worse. During a disastrous Fox News appearance, she claimed the evidence was taken out of context and suggested Crockett was conducting a partisan witch hunt. When pressed on specific amounts and dates, she stumbled through non-answers that convinced no one. Her response about prosecutorial discretion became an instant meme. Social media users created mashup videos set to circus music. The hashtag #NonBondiFails trended worldwide for 6 consecutive days. The psychological toll became visible during her final public appearance. At a hastily arranged press conference outside her Miami law office, Bondi's hands shook as she read from prepared remarks. Her voice cracked multiple times. Her eyes darted nervously between reporters and her attorney, who stood just off camera making frantic hand gestures. "I have dedicated my entire career to public service," she said, her words barely audible over the clicking cameras. "These allegations are politically motivated attacks designed to undermine the integrity of law enforcement in Florida." But even as she spoke, her body language betrayed her. She clutched the podium like a life preserver, her knuckles white with tension. The final nail came when federal agents executed search warrants on her law office, home, and storage units. Edison discovered included over 400 pages of handwritten notes detailing contribution schedules with mathematical precision. What happens when confidence without facts meets preparation without mercy? What happens when someone tries to deny the obvious in front of the nation watching? If evidence is stronger than denials, how long can political theater mask criminal conspiracy? The answers, brutally displayed in that committee room, remind us that in the end, truth has a way of winning. Even when it takes 41 seconds to destroy a lifetime of lies. If this story of political accountability entertained or taught you something about the power of preparation, like, share, subscribe to Master USA. What's the most devastating political mistake you've witnessed? Let us know in the comments below. This dramatized story is inspired by real events and public figures. All dialogue and specific incidents are fictional. Listen for commentary and educational purposes. No defamation intended, only illustration of accountability and the consequences of poor preparation.